the word heaven was really a problem for me, and I'd start getting these messages, and they said, we want you to call this book A Swan in Heaven, and we want you to use the word God and prayer and all of that. And I'm like, no, not those words. Please don't make me use those words, because no one's going to understand. They're going to think I'm talking about the Christian heaven and the Judeo-Christian God, and that's not what we're talking about. And they said, well, it's your job to tell them the difference. So we're going to use those words. And who am I to argue? They're my editors. They're my publishing company. So I call it heaven. And in heaven, and you guys all know this, I'm preaching to the choir here, and I like doing that. That's one of the reasons I'm having so much fun here. You guys all understand this. But heaven isn't up there. Heaven is right here. Heaven is in here. There is this stuff that everything in the universe is made of. We could call it fairy dust. I call it light. You call it light. So let's just call it light, okay? And so the light is everywhere, and it flows in and out of all the levels of existence, including this physical realm that we live in this barrier of the physical body. The light is always coming in and out. The barrier is ventilated. And so people who die are coming in and out too. There's nothing to hold them back away from us. And we can do that coming in and out all the time. We don't have to talk to dead people. We don't have to be dead. We can meditate. We can pray. We can breathe. You know that breath is sacred, and the yogis have known this forever. And that reminds me of just a little piece I'm going to share with you here, which I think I read to Dick when we were sitting in the restaurant the other night. I'm a hospice volunteer also, by the way, and I've actually gone back to school to get a master's in divinity so I could be a hospice chaplain. That's what I want to be when I grow up. I didn't know that until I was 56. Just segueing off this idea of breath. And what the breath does is it opens up, or it thins that veil, okay? And so one of the things my son told me, he gave me a very detailed description of what it's like to die. And one of the things he told me is about the breath mirror. I asked him, how come when people are dying, and this isn't always true, but when people are dying, you know, in hospice, you breathe fewer respirations. Normally you breathe like 20 times or 30 times a minute. When you're dying, it goes down to like 4. Morphine helps. And this is what he said. You once asked me about why people have fewer respirations as they die, and this is a good time to explain the breath mirror. As my body was dying and my breaths were fading and infrequent, there was a mirror image of each breath in heaven, breathing in new life, in much the same way a baby takes its first breath outside the womb. With each weakening, struggling breath on earth, a mirror image breath occurs on the other side, getting stronger as each earth breath gets weaker, until the final breath closes one door and opens the other. I was knowing this during the last 24 hours of my physical life, and it required focus and a sort of labor to do that work. I've told you before about the sacredness of breath, and this is a good way for people to understand it, as a breath mirror. So I started thinking about, you know, in the old movies, when they check to see if somebody has died, they put a mirror up to see if there's fog on it. I thought that was kind of amazing. And he went on to say, it is exactly that. It's a mirror. The whole universe works this way. Heaven is a mirror of life on earth, especially during the early stages of arrival. Breath on earth is sacred. In heaven, it's exactly the opposite, because during transition from physical life to heavenly life, it is the breath that carries us through. In heaven, that same breath is transformed into light, and it is our life force here, like breath is to you on earth. Imagine a reflecting pond. On one side there is breath, on the other side there is light. What is breath on earth becomes light in heaven. Why are we even here? Why did we come to earth in the first place? Well, you know, the story that resonates with me the most about that is that first we were at one with the light, and something in us said, okay, this light stuff is pretty cool, but I want more. I wonder what it would be like to be outside of the light. What would the light look like if I was looking at it from over here instead of from inside it? That little urge, the Course in Miracles calls it I forget, like a random, wild, crazy thought or something like that. Just a thought. I'd like to be outside the light. Whoop, there we are. And then we're like, oh, this doesn't feel nearly as good as it felt to be in there. But now that I'm here, wow, look at this. Here's another person just like me. Here's animals, here's plants, here's this. And then we start having this earth experience, and in a second later, we totally forgot about the light. And we get together like this to remember it. And so that's what spiritual quest is really about. But basically, when we're inside the middle of that donut with all the human drama, we believe that we're separate from the light. And the real truth is that we're not. And so all these experiences, horrible experiences, terrible traumas that we have, we're creating because they're good at doing the job. They put us in the PhD program to learn whatever we signed on to learn in this particular incarnation. Remember that when we're in the light, when we're in the outside of the donut, in the soul realm, there is no judgment there. So if you're out there and you say, well, I'm going to have an incarnation in which something terrible happens to me, my child commits suicide, out there in the soul realm, that doesn't look like a bad thing. That's like, wow, that'll really get the job done. A whole bunch of people are going to grow a lot because of that. Then you jump back into Earth and it's like, I didn't sign up for this. This is the worst possible thing that could ever happen to anybody. We don't remember, My son told me from the other side, when I asked him about why don't we remember, he said, it's like that movie Men in Black, when the people saw the aliens and the guys would zap them with the little memory stick. You guys remember this? And then they wouldn't remember. That happens in heaven before we come to Earth. Because if we came here remembering, we wouldn't be able to function here. We would just be wanting to go back all the time. And a lot of us do feel that way. I feel that way. I can't wait to go back, So the best we can do is go back through meditation and doing this kind of work. And then there are people that did not fully forget. And when you see the homeless people walking around talking to Jesus on the streets, what do you think they're doing? They're not insane. Well, by our standards they are. But they just still remember where they came from.